Ciao Isha,
Hi, ciao
how are
Alessandro.
you?
Good. How are you doing? How's it?
Well, it's early morning, so we are ready. As I told you, we are at that. We are at the moment we are at the 20 hours of live streaming. So
Wow.
it's yes. Thank you for being part of the 24 hours, and thank you for to help us to. Uh, Go ahead with this very crazy event that we built up.
No, this is
Well,
amazing. Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's an honor for us to be talking to you all the way from India. I know it's 5:30 in the morning over there, so you must be exhausted. I know you put this whole concept together as well.
but I think we all the team. I think you can imagine how much energy is in terms of people and so there are around this event and in the backstage. So I think
No,
oh,
I
a
know
good
that. And
team.
kudos to everyone. And it's honestly amazing for us to be a part of this and to, talk to you about design and talk to you about our experiences. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
There was now it's clear. Now it's
Now it's
clear. Yes. So just Isha. Isha is a journalist and the founder of Design Pataki, and I found, well, just to introduce you, I think I found uh, you are part let's say, a new generation um, of Indian designer, and thanks to you and your generation, you are showing, you are bringing a contemporary vision of Indian design to an international platform, to an
right.
international public, and that I think I found it very very important. It's an interesting. Uh, it's an interesting goal because
Mm-hmm.
as it happens for several issues, uh, India has a lot of different ways to do or to interpret Indian design. Let's see, you can find, but it's very important. It's very. I mean, the risk sometimes is to go in a classical cliche, and I think that there is an international, a contemporary vision and interpretation of what is uh, India in design, in interior, that is maybe not so clear looking from abroad or looking from the European point of view. So I
Correct.
really appreciate your work on that direction.
Thank
Um,
you. No, we're trying to do our best, honestly, to bring Indian design to a global level because I honestly feel that we're all global citizens now. I feel like boundaries are just for maps and we're all one in that sort of sense. So the whole idea is to bring Indian design to a global platform and vice versa because I feel like cross-cultural conversations are so important these days.
yes, and you use the term conversation that I really appreciate because it's when there is not just one way but two ways of
Correct.
exploring, and that's another important topic. Um, well, it's also interesting to have your, well, I ask you what your point of view, even if I understand the situation in your country is very big and
Mm-hmm.
different, about how um, well the people react. How is the situation of the lockdown or post-lockdown in India? Um, Maybe you
So
consider something that is close to your environment, to your context, but or more in general.
So we're now into 3 months of lockdown. Quite honestly, 23rd was when we finished 3 months. So it's been a very trying period because, as you know, a lot of in the design space, a lot of our workers are migrant workers. So they come in from the villages, they come in from small towns to the cities to work, and a lot of them have gone back. So our industry in that sense has come to largely a standstill. And it's at a point like this where, you asked me to speak about a word which, encapsulates what my thoughts are about this phase and what we're going through. And every time I sit, I'm reflecting, I'm asking myself why and where and how do we go from here? And it's almost as if I'm sort of having an intervention with myself, which is why I was, the word I picked out for you to describe today's conversation was intervention. And, it brought me to think about our journey as Indians and, culturally how we've come about. And something which is very interesting, Alessandro, you've been to India a lot. You've interacted with so many, you've interacted with our culture so much. And one of the things is that culturally, our grandparents were brought up with an innate sense to give back to society. It was a very selfless attitude or culturally which they had in them. And it's something which I feel has gotten lost down the lines. So that's something which comes back to me at a time like this. And the other thing which, which we were brought up with was a sense of being sparing or being economical in a certain sense. And when I say that, I don't mean that we couldn't afford the means for something. So it was just an attitude to be more conservative and to sort of save for a rainy day. And that's something which in this whole period has come back. So when coming back to intervention, that's kind of what we have to ask ourselves at a time like this. And so today I thought, we could talk about two areas which I thought we could shed some light on in those areas. And one of them happens to be, so this is the word I put together for you, is maximum intervention. And maximum intervention, when I say that, is I mean in the craft segment especially. So Alessandro, you've been to India, you've experienced a lot of craft, right?
Of course. I think this is one of the base of the, can become one of the most, one of the pillar of the economy.
Yeah.
It's for sure one of the pillar of the cultural background of some territories. Absolutely.
Exactly. So what I realized is, so for us, maximum intervention is required in craftsmanship, and especially for women and uplifting women. And I'm going to get back to why I say women and uplifting women. And the reason I say maximum impact, Alessandro, is because it will have the most impact on the design and decor industry if we're able to bring about a change in it. So the maximum impact would be that industry if we're able to sort of really make a change in the cogs that, move the machinery as of now. And having said that, so what I realized while I was putting together my thoughts for this conversation was that India is actually it plays a huge role in the global export, in the global industry for design and decor. And that's something which is unknowingly, that's something which I think internationally you don't, like a lot of people aren't aware of. So for example, we have amazing glass blowers in Firozabad who are exporting beautiful chandeliers. Then we have a lot of the furniture which is being made out of Jodhpur. So they're manufacturing for Crate and Barrel, they're manufacturing for Restoration Hardware, H&M, so on and so forth. I mean, you've been to one of these stores and seen a product which is made in India. And then we all know of Tom Dixon, and Tom Dixon's, his perforated metal lights that he has. Those are all made again in Moradabad in India. Those thali, the trays that he has, the metal trays that he makes. Again, they're made in India, and then China sort of replicates them. So you have duplicates coming out of China, you have counterfeits coming out of China. So what we realize is that 40% of the global exports in drugs is also out of India, which amounts to 1.5 billion euros. So that's a huge amount.
Absolutely. You say the numbers, the percentage you mentioned is absolutely impressive. And
yeah,
sorry, please.
Yeah, 40% of all the rugs coming out of India, and I don't know how many people globally know that a lot, like that quantity is actually being all handmade, hand tufted by weavers in India. So the whole concept, the whole idea is we really need to make that intervention so large that we're known. So now what happens, it brings me back to the thought, is who are these invisible people that are making these pieces? Why are they just human machinery, right? So why don't we know about these people that are actually making each one of your pieces? Your rug is handmade in India. So it brings me back to the question. And when we talk about invisible people, I also want to come back to invisible women. So now what happens in the Indian culture is that the women become sort of torch bearers of this craftsman or of an artisanal approach, is because a lot of the men have abandoned, they've stopped doing craft, they've stopped making because it's not sustainable for them. So they've, taken on regular bank jobs or, whatever, a day-to-day job. So in that sense, women have now started playing a very important role in the artisanal segment as well. And a survey has also been done where 56.13% of the artisans are women. So that also brings the number as to it's such a large percentage that we can't ignore it anymore.
But when you talk about the,
right,
sorry, when you talk about invisible people, you are referring as let's say a protection about the work, a formal work. So it's invisible because can you better explain the issues? Because the percentage that you say, that's quite important. And the term invisible people, I mean, it's very, well, it's dramatic, the situation that you are.
It is.
Yes,
I agree. It is. And yes, invisible in the sense that, honestly, today a laundry basket could be made by hand, but we don't know the person who's actually made it. So we don't know these people who are actually hand making each one of the pieces they're using. We don't know their story behind it. They're treated just merely as, and it's a skill. It's not something which is available to everyone. It's something which has been passed down from generations. So it's something they've learned from their grandfathers and their fathers. So I feel like that's why I call them invisible, because we don't appreciate them.
So there is a knowledge that we can appreciate the result, but we don't know the people who had the knowledge.
Correct. So Alessandro, what I realized is that we have 14 million craftsmen in India, craftsmen and artisans in India. And 100 million plus depend on the livelihood of these artisans and craftsmen. So that is a number we can't ignore, and that's a number yeah. I was shocked. I was looking at this and I was like, this is unbelievable. This is something we need to, really sort of push and work on. And that's where the intervention comes back, because you see how this could have such a large impact on the industry.
Yes, as always happened in India, numbers are astonishing, because you mentioned we talked about million as it were. No, absolutely. There are numbers that you cannot. You have to consider, because it's a very big. Well, it's a big number, but at the same time, considering that we are talking about craftsmanship that is based on a tradition, that is based on a knowledge on how to use material, how to apply. I think that there is one point from my knowledge that is not as your one, of course, on the field, but sometimes, especially with craftsmanship, there is one problem of who has the knowledge. It probably is not trained to apply the knowledge to maybe to a contemporary way. And that probably can become a problem, imagining a contemporary and maybe international market.
Right. So, how do we solve that problem? That's what I was asking myself. And that's where we come down to a digital intervention. Because every segment, so there's so many different types of crafts, they're in different pockets all across the country. So how do you reach and uplift every segment of of that industry. So the only way that, you know, there are two plausible solutions, quite honestly, and one of them is a digital intervention. It's if they have, today as an entrepreneur, I would lack the skills to do certain aspects, right? Every entrepreneur cannot have all the skills to say photograph, do graphic design, put their products up, you know, create a presentation. It's impossible to be able to do all of it. So imagine a craftsman trying to do that. But what we can do is empower them with digital access, or, you know, where they're able to look at trends internationally, they're able to look at colors internationally, what is doing well, they're able to recreate, refashion what they've already learned. And I feel like that's something which, if they can harness the power of the digital space, the growth, the trajectory can be really large. So they'll be able to put themselves out there.
Well, when you talk about your digital intervention on that sense, I was thinking about, well, even your role on being very active on international platforms like International Fair, European. You have been, we met, and you are very active in what was during the Milano Design Week or European Design Week, and bringing a selection of contemporary India to those platforms is a very active role. What is the current emergency that we are facing, so the COVID situation, of course, affect lots of fairs that have been cancelled, lots of physical place that has been cancelled. But do you think that affect also this possibility of a digital intervention, or affect something more on the field of craftsmanship?
Yes, I think it'll make a huge difference. It will affect them because what you're asking me is, will it affect them directly because the shows have been cancelled?
I'm talking if how the situation affects the state of art, let's say the present, and how will affect the next month or the next time.
Yeah, no, honestly, right now, Alessandro, the situation is really tough because a lot of them work on day-to-day wages. So because we're not exporting and we're not sending goods out, it's affected them to a large extent. That in fact, there are a lot of COVID response platforms which have been created for the craft segment to be able to aid them and to sustain themselves during a time like this. So, you know, the shows internationally, what is happening is impacting us directly, as a matter of fact. So it also makes us question our salaries and our wages that we pay to our workers, to our craftsmen, to our artisans, because they should be able to sustain themselves through a rainy day as well.
Okay. I mean, it's a situation that, do you see a possible development?
So yes, of course, we're trying. Every studio, every designer is trying to uplift their craftsmen as well, and that's where, you know, I feel like in the long run, if we're able to educate them, we're able to bring that kind of knowledge to them, where they're able to take control of their lives themselves. I think that will make a huge difference. So especially because, you know, otherwise the only other option is if like a mass online retailer who has people on ground that can go to these various segments, pick up those pieces, then put it online. That is honestly the only other solution to this problem. And it's very hard to do that, to be able to access all the different pockets across the country. So hence, digital intervention is so important at a time like this.
And there is another point that I would like to ask you, the relation, let's say the relation between the needs of sustainability that we are facing worldwide nowadays, and especially during this period, because during this period we establish, I'm always talking worldwide, not something released, but during the lockdown, we let's say we came in a particular relation with nature, and it's a point that we touched in several conversations. So looking at when human beings stop everything, the quality of air became better. And so in any case, a special relation with nature. And so really we feel the needs of sustainability.
Correct.
And a new, let's say a new, we are ready, probably we are more ready to include sustainability, sustainable solution to the next new normality, as we are calling.
Yeah.
How that can fit on this big word of craftsmanship and with ancient knowledge.
So number one is craftsmanship is largely sustainable because it's human power. So it's one of the most sustainable products. Then talking about sustainability, I also put digital together with it because today our carbon footprint is so much less because we're able to do meetings online today. We're able to have virtual consultations online. You know, my friends would fly to go to a project and then meet their client, and now they're doing all of it digitally. So I feel like both avenues are so important because they're bringing our carbon footprint down to such a large extent. And one example of that is, we did something in the first month of lockdown. We were wondering, we were grappling with what to do with our new normal. And we put together something called Digital Design Week, which was a virtual 5-day festival of, interesting conversations, workshops, seminars. And of course, it was inspired by Design's Virtual Design Festival. But what was interesting, Alessandro, about it was that we were able to create a space of cross-cultural conversations without being constrained by a physical space, without being constrained by a geographical location. And what was interesting about it was the fact that we could have Indian designers and we could have international designers all have a conversation on the same platform. So as you know, we had Stefano Giovannoni from Kibu speak, we had Richard Hutton speak, and that's something which ideally, if we were to do this at an event in India, we'd have to fly them down, have them stay at a place, we'd have to have a venue, all of that. It would be, the drill of having an event like this. And so what I feel is that really helped us. One is reduce our carbon footprint. So the benefits of a digital intervention are so important when I think back about it. Also, what I realized was it brought about a democratization of design in a certain sense. And the reason I say that is because ideally an event would have around a few thousand people. But in a digital event, we were able to have 46 lakh people attend seminars, attend workshops, and listen to these conversations. And on normal basis, they wouldn't have probably had the economical means to fly or attend the event. Everyone doesn't want to do that, or they would only come for one day. So here they had access to the entire conversation. They had access to design for 5 days, sitting from the comfort of their home. So I feel like that also plays an important role in sustainability. It's something we need to accept for the future as well. What do you think?
Well, this is, I think, we are actually in that moment we are part of this digital big possibility that we have nowadays, and that we are using and exploiting as maximum as we can. But the digital issues is also relate with the generation in a certain way. So right. I'm sure that new generation of Indian designers are extremely familiar with digital tools, and I remember the webinar or the interview that you did during the lockdown, very involving international designers. Right. What I'm just to close a kind of cycle that you are describing, relate to the craftsmanship and to the big issues that you are that you propose. So the discussion is related to the. I'm talking about the invisible people that you are mentioning. I don't I cannot imagine which generation we are talking about and if they are or not familiar with digital platform or digital technology. So the possibility of use tools like webinar or providing information, but is this part, this portion of invisible people, as you mentioned, that is very important. It seems that is one of the invisible pillar of a big structure ready to
Yeah.
get in on this possibility of having information by a digital in a digital way.
I feel like, you know what point I feel like we need to drive back is that they actually don't have access to internet. That's something which we're taking for granted. And I think that's what I want to reiterate. And I think that's something you're grappling with as well. So they actually don't even have access to internet, a lot of the small towns. It's something we take for granted.
So it's one step back. So the big change, the big change should start from the beginning.
So they actually don't have, a lot of small towns don't even have, I mean, now they do, a lot of them do, but it's not widely available. There are still small villages where they don't have internet. So that's, I think, where you're, you know, grappling with the invisible people and you're grappling with the whole cycle. It's like, how is something as common as that not available to them?
Even because, as you described, the picture, those invisible, they look, well, I'm using the same word because it's an important part. They are even more invisible if they not have access to the big exchange of knowledge that is absolutely growing during this time. So
exactly.
It's a design issue, but at the same time it's a political issue. So it became a very big question, I think, because it's like providing the access to internet became one of the basic needs of a society nowadays.
And you know, so that finally brings me back to intervention as well. And that's something we need to ask ourselves is how do we inculcate a generation that is compassionate and respectful? How do we inculcate a generation that is mindful of resources, of materials and tradition? And lastly, how do we inculcate a generation that values the man that makes? So I feel like these are three questions we need to ask ourselves, and also ask ourselves is how, you know, coming back to your point of sustainability, coming back to your point of invisible people, is how are we redesigning our lives? How are you redesigning your life moving forward from here? So I feel like we need to have that intervention with ourselves when we think of this word.
Yes, because those are very wide questions. How to redesign the life is very, yes, it's a very wide question with not just one solution, no?
Exactly.
But we are, thanks to your description, so your picture, I think that is like having 2 or 3 points that are very focused and maybe that absolutely can help on that direction, on redesigning a life that will be different, but better in the sense more respectful, more sustainable, more inside within a framework or more democracy in a certain way.
Yes.
I think there is in what you are describing, there is a big role for education in general.
Yes.
And connect with education with the idea of sharing information and knowledge. That can be any kind, no? And
with minimal intervention to nature. I feel like right now it's it's universe's way of like talking to us, and it's like a little bit of a shake that we've all gotten.
Well, it's an hard. Well, we start with in a light way, but you describe a very strong and structured and a very important project, because it's the points you touch are the point of a political agenda in a certain way. So, and I found very important that a new generation of designers, of journalists, but at the same time of any kind of competences and skill in India can change the way taking advantage of the possibility. Unfortunately, our time is expiring because we need to leave the floor. But really, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to have you here, Esha.
It's an honor for us. Honestly, Alessandro, any conversation with you is always enlightening. It's a pleasure, always.
So, shukriya. And
thank you, grazie. Have a lovely day, Alessandro. And
ciao,
have a good nap after this. Ciao, Alessandro. Bye.
Ciao, Esha.